Hey, it's Coach Scotty here from Warrior Code Training, and I'm really excited today. I've been running my 21-day nutrition reset and my 6-week programs, my personal coaching, and so many times what we bump into is people with gut health issues. And a lot of times they don't realize it. And so I have a phenomenal lady that I want to talk with today. And so I want to introduce, and instead of me reading your bio, I'm going to get you do it, Yvonne, because you do it the best. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Yvonne King. Please tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm a gut health coach. 37, 40 years, I suffered with IBS until somebody shared information with me and told me about the importance of dairy and gluten and how that was affecting my gut. And I suddenly got better. And so I started telling other people. And next thing you know, I decided that was actually where my passion was. And so I went back to school, became a health coach, and now I help other people who were just like me, felt like you lived in the bathroom, felt like you looked like you were 6 months pregnant all the time, tired of people asking you when the baby was due because you're not pregnant again, right? And just time to get out and live life and not be so restricted by everything and feel like you can't control what's going on in your own life.
That is so awesome. So many of the greatest teachers I know come from a place of learning it the hard way, like myself, right? Fat to fit, broken to healthy, and then we teach. There's a certain few of us that do that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's hard not to share when I lost 50 pounds in less than 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. Just because they put me on a Candida diet, which I'm sure you probably know about Candida, right? So Candida is a fungal overgrowth. All my life, I had, lady Candida issues. Never realized that it can go into your gut, and that it's on your skin. I had my doctors never told me about that.
Yeah.
Never once, right? And went to a naturopath, and she said, "I'm pretty sure you have a Candida issue. We can wait till your test result comes back, or we can just go straight and get started." I said, "Well, let's get started. I'm pretty sure you're right." So, and in the first 2 months working with her, I lost over 30 pounds, about 35 pounds in those first 2 months on the Candida diet. And I just felt like a completely different person.
Yeah. And that's so predominant. Like, so many people have Candida overgrowth and they don't realize it. So Candida albicans, like I said, it's just an overgrowth of a specific type of organism in your gut. And here's the thing, it loves sugar. That's like its favorite food. And
it does.
Right. So in our 21-day nutrition reset that I run, we go sugar-free, grain-free, dairy-free for 3 weeks. And the changes are profound, and they're better if you go longer. But speaking to Candida overgrowth, what does it look like if you have that? And what does it look like to get rid of it?
Well, a lot of it is the sugar cravings. That's a really big one indicator. Sugar cravings can be a big one. But if you're always having reoccurring vaginal yeast infections and things like that as women, that can be an indication too. And, to get real, men can have that too.
Guys have yeast infections
it's
too.
Just different. And so what would happen with us is I'd get rid of it. We'd have sex. I'd get rid of it. We'd have sex again. He'd give it back to me. I'd have it again. And then he said, like, "God, can't you ever get rid of this?" "No, because you're giving it back to me." Right. And so we could never get rid of it. We could never get rid of it. And I didn't realize that it was related so strongly to diet. Nobody ever told me that.
Yeah.
Right. And people get so frustrated. I hear this all the time. People get so mad, especially in the IBS world, right? Because we feel so betrayed. People aren't, your doctors aren't telling you this. Your doctors aren't willing to help you. They can't find anything wrong, so they just call it IBS. And I understand their frustration because I've been there.
That's
right.
But people don't realize that in the medical world, syndrome means we don't know. So we're glumping it in here, chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome. Syndrome means we don't really know. So
you don't really need any of these other things. You only got 3 of the 6 ticks you need to get into this category. And so we just put you in here.
Yeah.
That's fine. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that you can't still take control of things, right? There's so much more we can do that is beyond the way our current medical system wants to work, right? Because our current medical system doesn't look at the function and what is not quite functioning correctly. It's functioning enough in that it doesn't meet a qualification of a disease or a condition, but things aren't the way they should be, right? And so how do we get our body working properly again?
I think that's the thing that people don't understand most about the medical system, is that it is a disease care system. And that's not bad. Like when I cartwheeled down a highway and shattered a bunch of things, I needed the medical system, put me back together again. Absolutely. But doctors don't study optimal state ever. They study disease state. And that became really clear to me when my wife and I were trying to have children, and we ran into some things, and she had to see an endocrinologist, and she saw one of the premier endocrinologists in Western Canada, in Calgary, a guy that he's like a genius level when it comes to the thyroid and adrenal glands and stuff like that, pituitary, hypothalamus. And my wife got, after taking all this stuff, she was clear, right? Her was within normal. And I had said to the doctor, I said, I got subacute thyroiditis in 2001, and it totaled my thyroid. I dropped 30 pounds in 3 weeks and was at the Cancer Institute. They didn't know what was going on, all this kind of stuff. And then they realized it was a virus, subacute thyroiditis. And they said, well, your body's just going to have to figure out how to beat that. And I took some antigen infused extract to get rid of that, like some colostrum derivative to heal my immune system. I got rid of the virus, which is great. But I was always kind of tired after that. And I had asked this doctor, I said, is there a way to test if my thyroid is running at optimal again? And he said, I have no idea. We don't know anything about optimal. I don't study optimal. We only know about disease state, and we just try to get it to baseline. You don't know optimal? How do you, wait, what? So what are you comparing to? If you don't know what optimal looks like, that's like saying, I don't know what winning's like. I just want to make sure you don't lose. Well, yeah, but that's our medical system.
Well, and that's the thing is, so people often say, okay, so what's the difference between when a naturopath looks at the same test results for thyroid or something, right? Versus a regular medical doctor looks at that thyroid and they'll say, oh, everything looks fine. And then the naturopath looks at, oh, we need to boost this up. And people say, well, why is the difference? Well, the difference is that when we go to the lab, we get a test result, and they give us these little fancy numbers and stuff. That's against everybody else that got the test. Well, the only reason people got that test is because they don't feel right.
Yeah. They're comparing disease states.
Yeah, right. So in this little scale, right, you're here, so you're okay. But everybody that's on the scale isn't feeling right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where should it really be functioning at? Right. And so it's just a different way to look at things altogether.
Yeah, it is. Because in my experience, naturopaths and people like that, they're looking for optimal function versus you're not sick.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. Now, so there's so many different things I want to talk about. So what can people do to be, in the sense of your gut health, to be optimal? Like let's talk about maybe some of the things that are doing that are harming your gut health and what we can do to help your gut health.
Well, food, of course. Right? Food is medicine, right? But we gotta look, the thing I always say is you've got to take a look and realize that all those bacteria, the bacteria around us, are not a bad thing. We have viruses already in our bodies. We're supposed to. That's how our immune system stays fired up, is that we're exposed to bacteria and fungus and all these things, right? That they're meant to be in our body.
Yes.
Candida is there for a very particular purpose. We need to have so much Candida in our body for our poop to even degrade and break apart.
Yeah.
Right. So we think we have to eradicate everything. Our society is like, destroy the bugs. No. Like there's all these good and bad bugs. I hate using the word bad bugs because they're there for a purpose. We just aren't meant to have way more of the bad ones. There's supposed to be this many, and we're supposed to have this many of the good ones. We're supposed to have a really good mix, right? And unfortunately, because of habits that are in our society, things like too much sugar, too much alcohol, too much caffeine, too much stress in our lives, all these things give an excuse for the undesired ones to become more profit and do better, because we're giving them what they need, right? Things like sugar, and that to survive, we're giving them more of that kind of stuff. And we're not then allowing the good guys to have what the good environment that they need in order to survive. So we have to stop looking at how to kill all the bacteria in our lives. Number one. Now, I'm not saying don't wash your hands or anything like that, but don't get carried away with antiseptics and antibacterial washes and microbe stuff that stays on the surface for longer so that it protects you longer. Oh my goodness. No, like, no, we don't need all of that. We just need to have soap and water, wash your hands. You know, nowadays, yes, there's some things going on around us right now. We want to protect ourselves, but don't get carried away.
Yeah.
When years and years and years ago, there was a study where they studied farm kids, country kids, you know, chicken heads, right? So they studied the immune system of farm kids versus country kids versus urban kids, right? And they combined all of this, and the farm kids had way stronger immune systems. Why? Because they pet their dog, and they were out feeding the horses, and you know, whatever, right? And they were exposed to stuff.
We ate dirt.
Well, yeah, and like, there's a book out there called Eat Dirt. It's Dr. Axe's book called Eat Dirt, and it's actually a pretty good overview book. It was a pretty decent book. But you know, I mean, we ought to not be scared of a little bacteria. That is what gives us an immune system. And that's one of the things that I've even talked to my medical doctor. I said, the thing that alarms me the most over the last couple of years is these young children who aren't allowed to play with friends or anything else, right? They have no natural immune system because we've disinfected everything around them, and they're not allowed to play with anybody, and they can't touch anything. And well, how are they developing their natural immune system that we got the advantage of doing? They're not having that advantage anymore.
Yeah,
right?
it's opposite to innate intelligence. Have you ever read the book by Howie Mandel called "Here's the Thing, Don't Touch Me"? It's really worth reading. It's a fantastic book. Obviously, Canadian Howie Mandel became a very successful comedian. He's now on America's Got Talent. He's done all kinds of stuff, but he is a self-proclaimed germaphobe to the nth degree. And it's interesting when you read in the book how he became that way. He comes by it honestly. They went on vacation in Florida, and he got a worm infestation in his skins, like bot flies, I think it was, that were bugging at him on the beach, and they laid eggs, and he had worms growing into his skin, and his mom would pull those out with tweezers and things. And it was a horrible experience as a child. So I get why he became a germaphobe. That would be very traumatic. But it's interesting when he ran his interview show, because he was on late night television for a while, his biggest fear was somebody shaking his hands. That's why he invented the fist bump, because it was less contact, right? But he admitted in the book that under his desk, he had them build a little reservoir and a pump for hand sanitizer. And so even after the fist bump and during the entire interview, he would be fastidiously sanitizing his hands, right? Because he just couldn't stand bugs and the thought of everything. So what was interesting was he developed chronic issues of warts and skin conditions and fungal infections in his hands because he kept repeatedly killing the good bacteria, the good stuff that defends you. We are surrounded in it. And this whole thing about sanitizing our hands with alcohol. Oh, wow. Talk about a bad idea. And
then what do? You do this, right? Yeah. And so then it gets in your mouth and everything else, right? And same thing with, you know, the sprays on our foods and things like that too, right? All those chemicals, all are meant to kill bugs. And they're not just going to stop at just this one or this one, right? They kill them all, and they really destroy, you know, us from the inside out, right?
So we need to eat natural foods. Definitely, if you've been mucking around in some schmutz, I mean, as a habit, wash your hands before you eat. That's just a no-brainer, right? So that's not a bad thing. But just soap and water is fine.
Yeah.
Because especially, you know, we won't get into the rabbit hole that is there, but most viruses are fat soluble. So soap is made with fat. So soap and water, that's all you need. We don't need to go crazy. Cool. So we won't go crazy on that. Here's a question that I know that comes up a lot. And I know this is personal too. I I was cutting my toenails and then I went for a run, a big long run, and I got an infected toenail. And I thought, okay, so I put some, some peppermint, I put some, I put some essential oils on it, and it kept it at bay, but it was in there and it was growing. I'm like, all right. So I went actually to my naturopath and I got some ozone injections, and it brought it back down again, but then it festered up. I'm like, okay, something's living in there and it's got to go. So I had to go on an antibiotic, and it worked, right? Antibiotics are great. I use them sparingly because sometimes you need them, right? Something sealed in there and it's nothing I've done has affected it. So I went and got antibiotics. So now that I'm done antibiotics, which is antibiotic kills the good stuff and the bad stuff, I got to rebuild the good stuff. So what do we do for that?
Well, a good multi-purpose probiotic is good, right? Fermented foods are really good. Now, sometimes we think we can get away without a probiotic, but in situations like that, usually we can't. There's just the more variety of the good bacteria, types of good bacteria, generally speaking, in our system, the better, right? And so when we eat fermented foods, most of us have this one or two kinds of fermented foods that we really like.
What's a fermented food for those that don't?
Yeah, so like sauerkraut, kombucha, kimchi, fermented soys.
Are there any good fermented foods?
Well, I love them personally.
I reveal myself.
I haven't, we don't do soy in our house because our daughter has a soy sensitivity. So I don't do any soy.
That's
so I'm not into, like the beans that look like stuff is actually growing onto them. I haven't got into that stuff, but I make my own sauerkraut and kimchi and stuff, especially in the fall when I have extra stuff of all that things coming out of the garden. I make a fermented pickled and a pickled bean that is so easy to do. You're just making a brine, which is salt water, right? Leaving it, coating it all to get all in, making sure it's all covered, leave it on their counter for a week, put it in the fridge, away go. But I mean, nowadays you can get so many at the farmer's market and all that kind of stuff too. But the thing is, every single type of vegetable, for example, has a different type of bacteria that grows on it, right? So the more variety of types of vegetables you have, the more variety of good bacteria that you have, right? So, so that's a big one. But then while you're doing that, making sure that you keep that sugar levels down so that you're not feeding the Candida and the SIBO situation that you might have. Many people have SIBO and don't realize it. So we want those things do really, really well on sugar. So we want to cut that stuff down at the same time so that we can control the not as good guys, right? And we give the good foods to the ones we want. So the things that they like are things like starches. There's certain type of starch called COVID brain. Non-digestive starch, things like cold potatoes, cold rice, like cooked and then cooled, and eat it cold. You can put a little bit of unmodified potato starch in your smoothie, just like a teaspoon of it. And so what happens with those certain types of starches, they don't digest in your small intestine like normal things would. So they get to the colon and they're still intact. And then they become food for the good bacteria in the colon.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so any kind of root vegetable is also really good. So, and I don't count potatoes as that. Yes, they're a root vegetable, but potatoes have that type of starch that really feeds the Candida and stuff too. So things like sweet potatoes, rutabaga, turnips, parsnips, like all that stuff is fantastic, right?
That's awesome. And for those listening, so Yvonne she got COVID earlier, so she still got a little bit of cough left over from that. So,
resistant starch is the proper term.
There you go. Resistant starch. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like how standard it was for the longest time to eat roots and tubers, like root cellar. It was a cold cellar full of roots, like you said, turnips and rutabagas and carrots and beets and all those things. I mean, that was so normal for the longest time. And we've kind of gone away from that as a culture, as a society. We don't eat those like we used to.
Well, and they're often thought of as the poor man's food, because our grandparents growing up, that's all they had during the war.
Yeah.
Because tubulars and roots were easy to grow. You could get tons of carrots, turnips, parsnips, potatoes, and you could easily keep them until next spring.
Yeah.
So that's all they had to live off of, right? And I know my grandpa refused to eat carrots because he ate so many carrots as a kid. He hated carrots, right? And so my generation, you know, we've kind of grown up a little bit of, well, but yeah, you know, for some reason, not always understanding why we're shied away from that. It's just that one of those little paradigms that's been transferred from our other generations. We just didn't realize, right? And so, you know, other vegetables and stuff are better for us because they're, you know, more expensive, so they must be better, right? We have a lot of issues in our lives that we don't realize.
Totally, right? And cultural pass me down stuff that's fascinating that way. I talk a lot about that in the reset program because we go off sugar for 3 weeks, and we talk about why socially there's a reverence for sugar, right? And again, what you alluded to is for our grandparents and even beyond them, culturally growing up in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, in the 20s, sugar was traded as a commodity like gold and silver. It was super, super rare, and only the wealthiest could afford sugar. And so sugar became this thing that your parents saved up for so that at Christmas you got candy, like you got cookies, or for your birthday, they would save up for months to afford enough sugar to bake you a cake. And it was held in reverence, like, oh, cake. And that was pervasive through into the 40s and so, but somewhere in the 40s and the 50s, in fact, partly the war, manufacturing processes developed sugar became better because they're trying to feed all these soldiers something, they needed calories. And so sugar then became the cheapest ingredient in the world and the #1 added ingredient in the world. You can now, sugars, it doesn't cost anything anymore. A bag of sugars, super cheap. And so sugar's in everything, but culturally, we still hold this reverence. We still hold this, oh, sugar. And it's fascinating to look back in the history books and study the biology of human beings back in the 1800s. The only people with diabetes were royalty because they're the only ones that could afford that much sugar to have it all the time. And as the poor people, we looked at the royalty eating cupcakes and sugars and treats all the time, like, oh, someday I want to, right? And now it's reversed. Now rich people are smart enough to realize sugar's bad for you in excess, and we don't eat very much of it. We limit sugar. And the poor people live on it. And who's got diabetes? Well, it's the poor people. So it's fascinating how that's flipped over. Yeah. But culturally, I don't know if we've grown up yet. Another couple questions. So essential enzymes and stuff like that. Like we talk about probiotic, which is, I think, a great idea. I mean, I notice with my dog, if he's having troubles, you know, if things are going out a little too easy when he poops, then I throw some probiotics in his mix and he's good right away. So we're the same though. So probiotic you talked about. What about digestive enzymes? Because I know there are people that don't digest things well. So I know there's, you know, protease and lactase, and there's different things you can do for that. What are your comments on helping people break down their food a little better if they're not?
Well, most people would benefit from having some digestive enzymes, right? I'm in my programs, what I try to do is the long-term goal, right, is to get our bodies working efficiently and effectively so that it creates enough of the enzymes on its own so that we're not supplementing only as a supplement, right? Not every day, right?
Not a replacement, a supplement.
Exactly. So, but to get started and get some quick wins, so to speak, starting to take a digestive enzyme is really important. Like on Saturday, so Friday I got COVID. I felt like shit. Saturday I felt like shit because I wasn't shitting. And so I realized that every time I tried to eat something, my stomach was gurgling and making a heck of a noise, and I felt crappy. And I realized that I actually had something going on with my microbiome that fast. It affected my microbiome so fast. So I had to take a digestive enzyme with absolutely everything. Even with my bone broth, I was taking a digestive enzyme for a couple of days because it was so apparent that my microbiome was all shook up and screwed up.
Yeah.
And so that's nothing wrong with that, right? So use it when we need to use it. But then we would like to get our body working on its own. And one of the things that we do in our program to teach our body to create enough of its own enzymes and stuff is something called CCFT. Have you ever heard of that, Scott?
I don't know if I have.
So CCFT is just coriander, cumin, and fennel.
Okay. I've heard of each of those individually as good things. That's interesting.
Yeah, right. So they all help. They help to soothe the stomach. And then they'll also help the pancreas to create more enzymes. So they'll teach your body to create the enzymes that you need on your own. So you just take, go to the grocery store, buy the whole spices, the cumin, coriander, and fennel as a whole spice. Take equal amounts of them, put them in your little Morris and pestle or something like that, where you could just give a really nice light little crush to it. Boil some water, simmer in the water for 10 minutes, strain it out. And then you can put a juice of a lime, fresh lime in there, or lemon if you want. If you need to put a little tiny bit of honey, that's okay. I'm a big one is, keeping as much of the sugar out as possible. Right. But that, and just have it warm once a day for sure. Yeah. Twice a day, it's okay too, but you have to make it fresh. So you can't make up a big batch and then, heat it up. You got to make it fresh, or put it in like a thermos. Like I have a big, one of those really good thermoses, right? Like a igloo one or whatever. Yeah. So when I was doing my, my certification, I put myself through the same protocol that I teach people. And I just would make a thermos up of it so that I could have a glass in the morning and then a glass at night. And so I didn't have to go make it twice. Right. But that is really, really good. It's a great way to help kickstart and kick your own system into working properly.
That's awesome.
It's very easily available. We can get it anywhere in the world. Those spices are very common spices. You could use the ground spices, but then you want to run it through a coffee filter because it's kind of chalky and
because I know I love to cook and try different recipes and experiment and stuff. And it's funny, I have cumin, coriander, and fennel seed in my spice rack, and I'm like, I don't even know what those are for. Like, I know oregano and thyme and sage. I've got my favorites, but those sit there, and unless the recipe calls for it, I don't even use them. So people are going to ask, is there a simple way you could just get CCF? Like, could you just buy it at the health food store and add it in a packet? Like, because I know some people, when you say you got to go buy the fresh herbs and you got to grind them up and you got to steam them, they're like, oh, okay, you lost me at any time at all. But I mean, some things are worth the effort. Is there a faster way to play that game, or no? Okay, cool. That's good to know. Yeah. That's awesome.
No, you can put them all in if you have an extra pepper grinder that actually grinds it to just the perfect consistency. It's just that, I mean, I'm kind of one of those impatient people that I would stand there forever trying to get my, half a teaspoon. So I don't have the patience, but it's a perfect grind in a pepper grinder. It does give you a perfect grind. You can put it in like a coffee grinder, but then you just on off as fast as possible as you can, right? Because it's just best if it's not pulverized too much.
Right.
And then the same thing, there's another one called ginger turmeric lemonade, we call it. And so you're taking ginger root and turmeric root, right? So get the fresh root, peel them, I put them inside a Ziploc bag and hit them with my kitchen mallet because I'm too lazy to grind them all up because that's too much work. So I just put them in a Ziploc bag, crush them, stick them in the water and simmer it for 10 minutes. And then throw it through the filter and strain out all of that. Oh, you got to put a little bit of black pepper in with it because you always put black pepper when you put turmeric, right?
Is that right? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So there is a compound in black pepper that helps you absorb the turmeric. So because you can only absorb so much, right? And so whenever you're making something with turmeric, I always make sure you throw some black pepper in with it. So you just throw in some of the root into a pot of water, couple good grinds from your pepper grinder, simmer it for 10 minutes, strain it, and then put half a lemon in with it, and it tastes delicious.
Nice.
And you can keep that one in the fridge. So I don't like to waste stuff. So I'll make up one big eight cup pot, and then I'll strain it into one of those big glass jars, and then I'll go put some more water in it and I'll boil it again.
Okay.
Right. Put new pepper in with it. And then I just mix it all together in a big jar. And so then I have like 1.5 liters of it in the fridge. And then I just warm it up whenever I want to. It's good cold too, but turmeric or curcumin is really good for anti-inflammatory, right? So
yeah. And
ginger, of course, is great for soothing your gut and all of that kind of stuff, and those kinds of things too. So those two are really a really good one. The other biggest thing is the other big superfood when it comes to our gut is bone broth.
I'm hearing more and more about bone broth.
Yeah, and so bone broth, the collagen, people think is the magic, but actually that's only just one little tiny part of bone broth, right? They're still studying what all these other components are and exactly what they do. Grandma, knew it was good for us and told us to just have some soup, right? And they've done that for years and years and years and didn't know why, just knew that it made people better.
Yeah.
Right. So there's all kinds of compounds there. Many of them are just really, really good at helping the gut lining to repair itself, to be plump, right, to be hydrated, that kind of thing, so that hydration, so that things move along in our digestive system properly. But the other thing bone broth does is it closes the leaky gut. Right. So leaky gut is when the single cell membrane between our digestive system and our blood system, right? There's our nutrients are supposed to go through the cells.
Yeah.
And what happens is, for different reasons, they get some inflammation and they open up and things start to go between the cells. So undigested foods that's not finished being processed yet, can get through between the cells instead of going through the cells. Viruses can get through, bacteria can get through, all of these things. And then that puts stress on our immune system, because now our immune system has to go and say, hey, you don't belong here. And it has to round them all up, right? And filter them out through your liver and everything else, right? And it puts extra work on your liver, put extra stress on your immune system. And because it's like, letting the calves out of the field and somebody's running around trying to collect them all, right? And spending all their time doing that and their energy doing that instead of,
fence.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So the bone broth will help to, close that leaky gut, which is really, really important.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, we could go on and on, but I don't want to, because it's too long already. It's good. This is phenomenal. And what I wanted is to give people a taste and to know that there are super easy natural things you can do just by shifting your food. And I know some of these sounds like CCF maybe sounds like a little bit much work for some people. Okay, but if you realize the payoff, then it becomes worth it. But you teach courses and stuff, and you've got a course coming right up that I'd love for people to hear about. You've got a free one coming up too, where they can learn more about this. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So next week, I have a challenge. It's a 1-week workshop. I go live every morning from 9 to 10 in the morning. And each morning I have a topic. So we talk about leaky gut and what's leaky gut and how does that play a role and what's the importance of our digestive system. We talk about, on Tuesday, we talk about food and food intolerances and how that is so important and one of the missing pieces of the puzzle that people don't understand. We talk about toxins and how toxins are destroying the microbiome in the gut, which the microbiome is just a fancy word for all the good and bad bacteria that are in our system. It's not just our gut, it's on our skin and everywhere else. And then Thursday, we talk about the different types of gut infections. So that includes the things like SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which means it's not bad bacteria. It means that the good bacteria that's supposed to be in the colon has migrated into your small intestine where it don't belong and is causing a whole bunch of problems there, including things like brain fog even, and autoimmune conditions, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, all kinds of stuff. Right. And then it can be also Candida or other fungals. It could be parasites. We all have some kind of parasites, right? Because we're human. And could be things like H. pylori, right? So there's 4 main kind of categories of gut infection. And so people who think they eat all the right things and are doing all the things, and it doesn't matter because I still sick even though I eat perfect. Well, there's some kind of gut infection happening. So what is happening for you that's blocking your body's ability to move forward?
Right.
That's a big missing piece of the puzzle. And then on Friday, we talk about stress, because stress
Yes,
is a big role in everything, right?
I used to listen to a viral immunologist named Dr. Jesse Stoff, and he was one of the first guys that brought antigen infused extract number 10, which was based on the immune system rebuilding properties of colostrum to the world. He ran a cancer clinic in Tucson, Arizona, and he used to call it the PITS, PITTS, poor nutrition, infections, toxins, trauma, and stress. That's the huge reason why people get sick, is the pits. So that's really fun because you hit on a lot of those things. And so it's every day from 9 to 10. What if people can't make that time frame? They're at work or something. Is it recorded? Is there a way to
Yeah, if they go to my website, which is yvonneking.ca, and then / breaking free, which is the name of the event.
Yeah.
Then if they register through that, they will get the notification when I go live. So if they've forgotten, but then at the end of the day, they will get the replay link.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sent to them so that you can just watch them all on Friday or whatever, if you have to, or whatever, right? But that way, then you can rewatch them or watch them at your own leisure. And then the my 5-week program is called the Kickstart Your Gut program, and it starts on 9 days later, right? So that we have time to go through the whole thing. People can book a free call with me to find out if the programs that I have would be of any benefit to them. Right. Yeah. And talk about what is actually happening for them and which would be the best fit, if any of them are. And then that gives us time to get ourselves organized and get started on the 2nd, 3rd of April.
That's fantastic. It's been so great to talk with you. I've got so many people that I have helped through my 21-day nutrition reset, but then there's a small percentage that there's still something I'm missing. There's still something where my knowledge base doesn't cover what you need. And I knew, Yvonne, that you were the person that is that missing link for that section. So I can't wait to share this with my groups, because as much as I love what I get to do and it works miracles, I think if in conjunction with you, I think that you're the extra layer for some people that's really going to make a huge difference. So I'm super excited to speak with you today. That's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I'm going to send people to yvonneking.ca, and I'm going to post this as a YouTube link for people to watch it. And hopefully people, enlist your services to help them poop, because if you're not pooping, bad.
Yeah, and ain't happy. Just like a baby ain't pooping, ain't happy.
That's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Take care. I'm going to push this.